Hey there, Rappies. Rapper9198 here, and welcome to another edition of Ryan's Day Reading. So today, this Ryan's Day Reading again is going to be a little different because I'm going to be reading 2 chapters instead of 1. So I'm going to be reading chapters 13 and 14. So before we go into it, again, just a little recap from chapter 12, The Green Death. So Hiccup finally got his chance is getting his chance to shine. He's speaking to the gigantic dragon, the Giganticus Maximus. Again, I'm trying to exercise my comprehensive skills there, but I know I kind of need to go back a little bit and look at that, but yeah, it's the big giant dragon that we now know is called the Green Death. And so it sounds like Hiccup is communicating with them, but still the Green Death is wanting to eat everybody. And so Hiccup came back and told everybody that he says the Green Death comes in peace. So now we're going to go into chapter 13, when yelling doesn't work. So we're starting with that one first. All right, so the dragon slept on as the Council of War argued about what to do next. I'm going to write a strongly worded letter to Professor Yavish and Stoik the Vast. This book needs a lot more words to tell you what to do if yelling doesn't work. Which shows how cross Stoik was. He never wrote a letter if he could help it. Stoik, in fact, was really rattled for the first time in his life. This is what comes of not following the law, he thought to himself. If I had banished the boys last night like I should have done, they would not be here to die with the rest of us. I should have put my trust in Thor. Mogadon the meathead had not yet realized the gravity of the situation. He thought it was a question of constructing some sort of megaphone machine to make the yell sound bigger. A gigantic dragon just needs a gigantic yell, he said. We already tried that, oh plankton brain, said Stoik. Who are you calling Plankton Brain? Demanded Mogadon, and they went whisker to whisker like a couple of furious walruses. Hiccup sighed and walked out of the village. He had a feeling the grown-ups weren't going to come up with anything fiendishly clever. To Hiccup's surprise, he was followed not only by Fishlegs, but by all of the novices from both the Hooligan and the Meathead tribes. They stood around Hiccup in a semicircle. So Hiccup, said Thuggery the Meathead, what are we going to do now, then? What do you mean by asking Hiccup? Demanded Snotlout crossly. You're not going to ask the useless to get us out of this mess, are you? He just single-handedly got us all to fail the final initiation test. We were about to be banished and eaten by cannibals all because of him. He can't even control a dragon the size of an earwig. Can you talk to dragons then, Snotface? Asked Fishlegs. I am pleased to say I cannot, said Snotlout with dignity. Well, shut up then, said Fishlegs. Snotlout got hold of Fishlegs by the arm and started twisting. Nobody tells Snotface Snotlout to shut up, hissed Snotlout. I do, said Thuggery the Meathead, and grabbed Snotlout by the skirt and lifted him clear off the ground. Your dragon got us failed just as much as his. I didn't notice anybody's dragon setting up and banging like a good boy in the middle of that dragon fight. You shut up, or I will tear you limb from limb and feed you to the gulls. you wrinkle-hearted, seaweed-brained, limpet-eating pig. Snotlout looked into Thuggery's stern little eyes. Snotlout shut up. Thuggery dropped him and wiped his hands disdainfully on his tunic. Anyway, said Thuggery, my father was on that stupid council of elders too. I'm with Hiccup. What kind of father puts his stupid laws before the life of his son? And what kind of stupid test was that anyway? So there, yeah. And then there, so there's Snotlout and Fish Legs there. Yep. And what kind of stupid test was that anyway? If we save all those stupid people from a real dragon like this one, maybe they'll let us into their stupid tribe after all. Well, 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 thought Hiccup. This is a turn-up for the books. Maybe that dragon was right, and he is going to help me with my "it's hard to be a hero" problem. Before he eats me, of course. One solo meeting with the Green Death, and here were 19 young barbarians, most of them much bigger and tougher and rougher than Hiccup, looking at Hiccup expectantly to tell them what to do. Hiccup stood on tiptoe and tried to look like a hero. Okay, said Hiccup. I need some time to think. Give the boy some room here, yelled Thuggery, pushing all the others back. He swept off a rock for Hiccup to sit on. You just do all the thinking you need, boyo, said Thuggery. This is a situation that needs a lot of thought, and I have a feeling you're the only one here who can do it. Anybody who can have a 20-minute conversation with a winged shark the size of a planet and come out of it alive is a better thinker than I am. Hiccup found himself warming to Thuggery the meathead. And, quiet! Yelled Thuggery. Hiccup is thinking. Hiccup thought and thought. After about half an hour, Thuggery said, Whatever you're thinking about to get rid of that monster, better work for both of them. There's another dragon? Asked Hiccup. Thuggery nodded. I went up to the highest point and spotted him while you were having your chat with the big green one. Okay, said Hiccup. That's good news, actually. Let's check out the new horror. The trail up to the highest point was littered with scallop shells and dolphins' bones thrown up by the gigantic storm. Along the way, they even passed the wreck of one of Stoich's favorite ships, the Pure Adventure, lost at sea 7 years before, and now perched crazily on a rock 3/4 of the way up the biggest hill on Burke. Once you were right at the top, it was possible to see most of Burke's coastline and the sea encircling you on all sides. Right at the other end of the island, a dragon entirely filled up Unlandable Cove and spilled over the sides. He was resting his vast, wicked chin off the cliff as a pillow. Great plumes of violet smoke were belching out of his snoring nostrils. He was another Sea Dragonus Giganticus Maximus, this time a glorious deep purple in color, and if anything, slightly larger than the one at Long Beach. The Purple Death, I presume, whispered Hiccup shakily. This is just what we need. Are you sure there aren't any more? Thuggery laughed, slightly hysterically. I think it's just the 2 nightmare-killing machines. 2 not enough for you? Back at the highest point, Hiccup outlined his plan of action. It was fiendishly clever, if a bit desperate. We aren't big enough to fight these dragons, said Hiccup, but they can fight each other. We have to get them really angry at one another. We hooligans will concentrate on the Green Death, and you meatheads will deal with the Purple Death. The one thing we will need is our dragons, who seem to have disappeared, said Hiccup. So we'd better start calling for them. They started calling for their dragons as loudly as they dared, and then louder still as there was no response. The 20 dragons that belonged to the novices were not, in fact, very far away at all. They had made up after the dragon fight and were now hiding in a piece of boggy bracken about 100 yards or so away from where the boys were standing on the highest point. They were crouching like giant cats in the ferns, wicked eyes gleaming. They were now so exactly the shade of a clump of bracken that they seemed to have melted entirely into the bog. Yep. And Newt's Breath, the dragon. If you had been a rabbit or a deer, would you have not noticed them until you felt the talons on your back and the hot fire on your neck? They had been following the boys for a while. So, whispered Fireworm, her tongue flickering menacingly. What do we do now then? The power is shifting on this island. The masters will not be masters for much longer. They are trapped like lobsters in a pot. We are not. We can fly whenever we want. Do we obey or do we desert? Dragons are not the sort of creatures to back a loser. Whatever we do, grumbled Bright Claw, let's do it quickly. My wings are freezing up. We could kill the boys now and take them as an offering to the new master, suggested Sea Slug with a grunt of greedy pleasure. What? That great green devil on the beach? Said Horror Cow placidly. I don't like the look of him, myself. He has too big an appetite. We might find ourselves as the next offering. We fly then, said Brightclaw, and the others murmured their agreement. Silence, hissed Fireworm. These islands aren't perilous, she sneered. We might fly from one danger straight into the mouth of another. I say we obey until we are sure that they have lost. When that time comes, I will give the signal for us to desert. And so, as if from nowhere, Fireworm and Sea Slug, Horror Cow and Killer, Brightclaw and Alligator and all the other dragons flew out of their hiding place and came circling slowly up to the highest point, landing on each boy's outstretched arm. Last of all came Toothless, complaining horribly. Dragons, said Hiccup, and he explained the fiendishly clever plan. Yep, there's Brightclaw here. Yep. And let's see, all right, so that's it for chapter 13, and now we're going to go into chapter 14, the fiendishly clever plan. So here they go. They're going to hopefully put their plan into action. The dragons protested a bit, but the boys yelled them into line. All except for Toothless, who absolutely refused to join in. You must be joking, sneered the little dragon. I refuse to go anywhere near a sea dragon's Giganticus Maximus. So those things are dangerous. I shall stay here and watch you all. Hiccup coaxed and bribed and threatened in vain. You see, said Stoutloud, the useless can't even get his own dragon to carry out his pathetic plan. And this is the person you are banging on to get you out of this mess? Said Dog's Breath the Dub Brain. Oh, shut up, Snotlout, chorused the rest of the boys. Hiccup sighed and gave up. Okay then, Toothless, you just stay here and miss all the fun. Now, I want everybody to go down to the gull's nesting place and collect as many bird feathers as you can for the feather bombs. Bird's feathers? Scoffed Snotlout. This wimp thinks you can fight an animal like that with bird's feathers? Cold steel is the only language a creature like that will understand. Dragons have a tendency to asthma, explained Hiccup. It's all that fire breathing they do. The smoke gets in their lungs. So you think this monster is going to die from asthma, right then? And they're because of a few feather bombs? Why not just feed them fried herring and see whether he drops dead of a heart attack in 20 years or so? Jeered Snotlout. No, said Hiccup patiently. The feather bombs are just to make them very confused so he won't kill anybody on the way. Snotlout. Thuggery, I'm going to need to coach Fireworm and Killer in what they have to say, continued Hiccup. I'm not putting my dragon at risk in this crazy plan, said Snotlout. Oh, yes you are, hissed Thuggery. Through gritted teeth, brandishing a massive fist at Snotlout. This guy is such a pain, Hiccup. I don't know how you put up with him. Listen, Snot Features. By some miracle, you have got yourself a reasonable dragon. You get that dragon to do what Hiccup wants, or it will give me much pleasure to personally boot you all the way to Porpoise Point and back again. Okay then, said Snotlout crossly, but don't blame me when we all get barbecued because of the useless's mad idea. Hiccup supervised the making of the feather bombs. The boys gathered great arms full of feathers from the gull's nesting place. They burgled every item of material they could find. Goggle Toad's nappies, Gobber's pajamas, Mogganin the meathead's tent, Vahalorama's bra, anything they could get their hands on. The grown-ups were too busy consulting amongst themselves to take any notice. Snotlout cheered up a bit because he could show off his superior skill at burglary. He managed to steal Baggy Bum's knickers right off him as he was standing in a huddle discussing a plan of action. Yep, so then here are some of the items that they're taking. I know it's... Baggy Bum didn't notice, not even when he reached a hairy hand down to the absent-mindedly scratch his great bottom. Baggy Bum didn't notice, not even when he reached a hairy hand down to absent-mindedly scratch his great bottom. He was too busy talking about bigger and better methods of yelling. The boys then wrapped the feathers up in the material so that they would fly out when the bomb was dropped. Each team of 10 boys was armed with about 100 of these feather bombs wrapped in a great parcel made out of an old sail. Hiccup led the hooligans toward the lawn beach, while Thuggery took the meatheads to Unlandable Cove. The thin column of boys were excitedly chattering as they set off behind Hiccup, Mortyhog and Clueless dragging the sail at the rear, the dragons circling and diving a couple of feet above their heads. Vikings are practically fearless, having been bred to be soldiers, so even Hiccup and Fishlegs had a surge of excitement at the thought of the battle to come. But as soon as the monster came into sight again, the boys and the dragons instantly dropped to their tummies and squirmed forward, hearts beating hard. It was impossible that anything could be that big. Hiccup led them as near as he dared to the edge of the cliffs surrounding the lawn beach. They looked down on the terrible creature snoring in front of them. His nostrils alone were as big as 6 front doors, and the stench reeking out of them made it difficult for the boys to breathe. Warty Hog, who had always had a delicate stomach, threw up disgustingly in the heather. Hiccup, Fishlegs, and Clueless unwrapped the feather bombs and gave one to each boy. The boys called their dragons as softly as they could, and each put a feather bomb in their dragon's mouth. They then stood up on the edge of the cliff with their dragons on their outstretched arms. This took about the same amount of bravery it might take for you to leap off a mountain at 1,000 feet. Even with the monster fast asleep, the natural reaction was to keep hidden in the bracken. Hiccup tried not to breathe in. He lifted his arm to give the command to begin. "Go," whispered Hiccup. "Go!" yelled back the boys, and 10 dragons flew up and circled around the vast sleeping head. Just as the Green Death inhaled, Hiccup shouted, "Now!" And the dragons let go of the feather bombs. The Green Death took in a breath that was half air and half feathers. He woke with a gigantic sneeze, and as he shuddered and coughed, Fireworm, who was treading air near his right ear, gave a speech which went something like this, but a lot more irritating. "Greetings, O sea dragoness Pusillanimous Minimus, from my father, the terror of the seas. He is feeling like feasting on the barbarians, and if you get in his way, he will feast on you. Swim away, little sea slug, and you will be safe. But stay on this island, and you will feel the sharpness of his claws and the fierceness of his fire." Yep. Fireworm, okay, and then here's the picture here. Fireworm leads the way in Operation Sneeze Attack. The Hellorama's bra makes a particularly effective double bomb. Oh my god. Oh my goodness. The giant monster tried to laugh sarcastically and cough at the same time, but this is virtually impossible, and a feather went down the wrong way, making him cough even more. Then Fireworm bit him on the nose. It must have felt like a flea bite, but the monster was outraged. Through streaming eyes, the Green Death made a swipe at this irritating dragon flea and missed. One giant claw tore down part of the cliff face instead. The 9 other dragons had by this time returned to collect more feather bombs from the boys on the cliffs. "Now!" yelled Hiccup, and with split-second timing, they let their bombs fly. They hit their target of the Green Death's nostrils, and he collapsed with coughing again. You cannot win, puny worm," crowed Fireworm. Wriggle back to the sea where you belong, and let my master have his supper." Now the Green Death was really cross. He bounded lopsidedly after Fireworm, trying to bat away this irritating little speck of a dragon with his claws. But the Green Death had the same sort of difficulty in catching Fireworm as you might have if you tried to catch a firefly with your bare hands. Dragons are better than humans. Dragons are better than humans at that sort of game. But the Green Death kept on missing because his eyes were streaming so much. "Missed again," sneered Fireworm, enjoying herself hugely, and she flapped just out of reach of the Green Death's claws. The Green Death made another wild leap toward her as Fireworm flew on around the corners of the cliff. steering the monster in the direction of Unlandable Cove. Hiccup and the boys ran after them as fast as they could, but they hadn't a hope of keeping up. Running through heather is not unlike running through knee-deep molasses, and they kept disappearing up to their knees in the bog. As Fireworm and the monster got farther and farther ahead in their race along the shoreline, it took longer and longer for the other dragons to fly back to the boys and return with more feather bombs. The military commanders among you will recognize the kind of problems that ensue when the supply line can no longer reach the forces at the front. Eventually, it was taking so long to reload that there came a moment when there were no more feathers tickling the Green Death's nostrils, and his eyes stopped streaming, and suddenly he could see the maddening Fireworm pinpoint clear. The Green Death made a lightning reflex swipe at the red dragon and caught her in one gigantic claw. It was lucky for Fireworm that at that very moment, the Purple Death came crashing round the corner and struck the Green Death heavily in the stomach. His grip loosened on Fireworm for a second, and she flew off, panting with relief. The Green Death sat down heavily in the sea and fought for breath. The Purple Death did much the same. And that's it for chapter 14. So those are those two chapters, and so this is quite a big plan that they had put in place. I was honestly a little bit surprised by it, actually, and I really do think it's nice to know that Hiccup really is getting his chance to shine. He is actually showing some great leadership, and even though Snotlout didn't, he's still not entirely supportive. He still thinks that Hiccup is useless, but it's nice that he has his other, the other members are supporting him and trying to get Snotlout to just go with it. And, even though he was, Snotlout reluctantly agreed to join, but hopefully at the end of the book, they'll be able to, be friends. Hopefully he'll be able to put that behind him and they'll be able to all get along together. But yeah, it's nice to see them working together. I really think it really shows great teamwork. And I like how also both the tribes are working together, because usually, because in the book, they've always been against each other, but now they're actually working together to survive. And I like that they're actually, and they're putting their skills to it's showing that they're putting all their skills together. They're combining all their brain power and working as a team. And I think that's a very good thing. It's a very, I don't know, what's the right word? I don't know, I want to say insightful, but it's a satisfying feeling. That's probably better. It's a satisfying, heartwarming, comforting feeling to see that everybody's using special skills that they've learned, and with everybody, they're working together. It's putting to good use for this plan to help them all survive. So I like how it's all unfolding and turning out. So, well, we'll see what happens when we continue next time for chapter 15. And I think next time I'll be reading both chapters 15 and 16, because those are pretty short chapters there. And well, maybe I'll read 3 actually, because all 3 of them are pretty. The next 3 chapters are pretty short actually. So, but yeah, I'm excited to see where things go. All right, well, thank you, Rappies, very much. Hope you guys enjoyed this Ryan Z reading. Love you all to death. God bless, and I'll see you next time. All right. Bye.